What's up, everybody? Seth here from Flintknapping by Seth. Saturday night, what else would I be doing? Sat by my fire, beating on some rocks. That's what I do. So, Saturday night, beating on some rocks, that's what I'm gonna do. Got a piece of K County from Oklahoma here. And this one's got an S on it, and I had a load of K County that I split with Jim Redfern a long time ago, back in 2007. This is one of those pieces because it still has one of the letters on it right there. I remember from that. So I've had this piece laying around for a long time. Might as well make something out of it. I hope everybody at home had a good week. I hope everybody always has a good week. There's a nice flake off there. Right there. So whenever we're flint knapping, the places that we hit is called a platform. So where I hit was right here. So in flint knapping terms, that would be called a platform. And this is a flake that came off there, of course. I might save that one to make a point out of later. That one went all the way to the other side right there. So I hit it right here. Flake traveled all the way to the other side. When that happens, you get some good thinning. So I'm going to come back right over here and try to do something similar coming back the other direction. Yep, I'm flint knapping. I will eventually have an arrowhead here. It just takes a while. That's what I'm working at. So my flake traveled all the way across there. Hit it right here, went all the way across. Now, that side got flat pretty quick. Need to work on the other side. Well, before you thin the middle, thin down the ends of it. Because if you thin the middle first, then it'll break. So usually try to keep your ends thinner than your middle. And then abrade it real good and have you a nice platform there. Strike it where you want it and get it to pop off there. I like to nap in my hand, say like right here, in this spot right here. I'll put my fingers underneath that right there, and I'm going to hit it right here, and I'll make it kind of go where I want to right there. So you might want to try something like that. And then the flake kind of comes off right there where your fingers were at. And to thin it in the middle, you have to make sure that your flakes are traveling at least halfway across or more. Got a weird crack in it right here. Kind of causing me some problems. It's hard to see. Right there. So I'm going to work at trying to get this out of here. Alright, well, that got most of the rest of that crack out there. But now this part is a lot lower than the rest of my edge here, so I definitely got to work on that. The donkey approves. What's up, Annabelle? How's it going? Yeah, actually, this fire's pretty warm. Check it out. My fire pit is dug about 18 inches deep in the ground because I heat treat my rock in there sometimes, so it's pretty deep, and once I get it full of coals, it puts off a lot of heat. No, my flint knapping tool, this one right here, is made out of wood, copper, and lead. So what I got here, this is called a copper bopper. It's one of your modern flint knapping tools, and people use it instead of a stone or an antler like ancient people used. I'm gonna get a drink real quick. So ancient people used a hammerstone or an antler usually. Modern people will use copper. This is a copper cap that goes on a copper pipe. And I have a tool that I put it in that makes it round. And then I melt lead in there to make it heavy. And then I epoxy a wood handle in it and then just let it dry for at least a day before you use it. I've got a little bit of Gorilla Tape on there too, just because whenever I get done with them, I put that on there because it seems to make them stay on there just a little bit longer. But most of the tools that I use are copper. And the reason that we use copper is it's a softer metal, so it works a little bit kind of more like antler does. Typically on which rocks to knap, they're going to be chert or obsidian or jasper or agate, something like that. And the reason that you flint knap those materials are they fracture conchoidally. And by fracturing conchoidally, what I mean is this right here. On these flakes right here, you can see it's round right here. Now picture if this was a big circle, and right here was just a tiny little piece of that circle right there. So that's a conchoidal fracture. Basically it means it fractures in a cone, which is going to go in the shape of a circle. And if you've ever seen a piece of glass that got hit by a BB or something like that before, and it pops out a little cone on the other side, that's what I'm doing right here. I'm just doing it at different angles than what you would see whenever a piece of glass gets broken. So what you want is a rock that will fracture similar to what glass will do. What's up? I gather them and buy them both. And sometimes I buy in bulk. Just depends on how I can get them. But this particular rock right here would be one that I usually buy from guys that live in the area that it comes from. I live in northwest Arkansas, so I get the kind of rocks that we got around here. Venture into Missouri a little bit. This particular rock, heat treating, what that does is it takes the bond of the stone and kind of breaks it a little bit. So if you took like my knuckles right here, and this was a molecular bond to those rocks right there, Say it's really, really tight before you heat treat it, but then after you heat treat it, puts little tiny fractures in there and puts just a little bit of space in there, so whenever I hit it, it makes it release easier, and it also changes the color as well. Yeah, that's leather on my leg. It's moose hide. Right, and I've had these pieces of leather for a long time. Moose hide will last forever. Well, I got 3 pieces all together here, and I got them all folded, so it makes it where I got 6 there. I don't really nap on my leg that much though, so I don't really need it that much, but when I do, it's nice. Or when I'm pressure flaking, pushing on my leg. I really kind of like doing it in my hand better. But if I'm working on a big stone or there's certain things I'm trying to do, I might do it on my leg instead. No, I don't really hunt with any of my points. I usually just go hunting with more modern methods. I actually went deer hunting this morning and it was successful. But I was not using a bow. And I plan on going deer hunting again in the morning. And hopefully it will be a success as well. The one that I did get though, it was kind of funny. What's up, Iowa? I'm down in Arkansas. The deer that I did get this morning, heard some noise kind of coming up behind me. So I waited and a doe came out. And then there were still more footsteps coming, so I just kind of waited to see what came out, and then a buck came out that only had 1 antler, but it was a 4-point on one side. So I went ahead and got him, and then whenever I went to go get the deer, it was just broke off right there. So apparently there was a lot bigger deer than him that had kicked his butt in the last few days. So he had a really bad last couple of days, but you know, it was fortunate for me. All right, I think I'm done with the percussion part of this. Kind of starting to get it thin, so I think I'm going to start pressure flaking on it now. What's up, Mississippi? Next door in Arkansas. So what I'm going to do whenever I pressure flake on here, whenever I get done with the percussion portion of what I'm doing, and by percussion I mean striking the rock. So I'm hitting it, it's percussion. That's what they call that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply pressure to the stone, so that's called pressure flaking. And this is my pressure flaker right here. I have a plastic handle, and I got a piece of copper in there, and I sharpen it down with a file, and I use that for my edges. But after you get done hitting it, you have to kind of even it up, because if you try to go in there and keep hitting it without evening it up right there, you'll start putting flaws in there. So you got to kind of clean it up before you do that. Temperature right now I think is like probably like upper 30s, maybe right below 40, something like that. And where was that you said you were from, Annabelle? Last night it got down in the 20s here. It was the coldest night we'd had so far, and made good for, you know, it made a good morning for if you were hunting this morning, that's for sure. But yeah, no, it's not bad. I mean, I got some warm clothes on. I got my fire going here. I like this time of year because I get really tired of the heat. And it's really humid here too, so once we get to this time of year, I like it. Oh yeah, Western North Carolina. Yeah, yeah, I'm sure you got plenty of humidity and heat over there in the summertime. So what I'm doing is just trying to even up the edges here and getting rid of the weak points on my edges there where I need to flake and I need it to be strong. Heck yeah, thank you. So now what I'm going to do, I've got the edges evened up a little bit better. So now I'm going to use my Ishi stick, which this right here is my pressure flaker. It's handheld, it's kind of short. So this right here, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to step it up to the 4-wheel drive version of that. I got this stick right here. So I'm going to use this to flake that. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to squeeze this between my legs, and I'm going to use the power of my legs to flake this because I can get a lot more power from my legs than what I can with my hands. But before I do, I'm just going to kind of resituate myself here. Some of these flakes off of me. Okay. Okay. And I also use a different hand pad whenever I use my Ishi stick as well. And I definitely use some leather in my hand for that because whenever your copper comes off of your stone, it hits into your leather. So if you didn't have your leather there, you would stab it into your hand. So there's definitely reasons for all the little things that I use right here, pads, leather, stuff like that, is to keep from injuring myself. And this is a copper, piece of copper in that right there, little copper tip. Okay. Lost my arrowhead. I found it. I keep it pretty sharp. Yeah, Flint Ridge is pretty nice whenever you can get it. It's hard to get. I usually keep it pretty sharp. So the sharper you have it, the more pounds per square inch that you're going to get of pressure to it. So that's kind of the way I like it. I gotta take some crap out of my pockets in the way. That's the donkey next door saying hi to everybody. In North Carolina, I haven't really heard of a whole lot of good material being over there for flint knapping. There's rhyolite over there, which is pretty tough, especially if you're a beginner. So you might be better off just kind of buying some. There's a few websites out there that you can purchase material from, and there's some Facebook groups out there as well that have a lot of people that kind of post material for sale pretty regularly. And there's also gatherings you can go to called nap-ins. So what I'm doing is flint napping. So a nap-in is a gathering of people that are flint nappers. And usually that's one of the better places to go get some material if you can find one in your area. But in North Carolina, I haven't really heard of any over there. In North Georgia that they have every year, and I believe it's in the springtime. All right, so that was, oh, right there. All right, so that's one pass on that side of the pressure flicking there. I'm not sure, I just they just call it North Georgia Nap-In on that one. You could Google search that one and I'm sure it would pop up. But yeah, it's really cool if you can pick up some material where you live at, because then, you know, when you're learning, you're not spending a ton of money just breaking stuff, because it takes a long time before you get good at it. So you got to be willing to basically spend a bunch of money breaking stuff and failing for a long time before you start succeeding, just like anything else. It takes a lot of work. So if you got some material that's really good, glass is a decent material to start with too, because a lot of the time you can find glass, you know, just all over the place. And Facebook does suck, I agree with you there. I pretty much just get on there for the flint napping groups, because I kind of use it to network with different people I know in different places that make arrowheads, and that's kind of where they like to be. I just recently discovered TikTok, and it's a lot more fun. One more right there. All right, there's one pass with the Ichi stick. Thank you. So now, after you do that on your edges there, if I can get this where you can see it. On your edges there, it makes it where it's real jagged there. So what you got to do is clean that up and then change the center line of this piece to shift over to the other side so you can start flaking that side. So whenever you're making these, Annabelle, if you get started doing this, keep in mind your center line on here. So all of the flakes that you're taking are always going to be below your center line on there. This one right here, I don't know, I think I've got probably like half an hour in this video or something right now. It was pretty much what we call a spall, which is a piece you just knock off and it's kind of ready to go. It's been knocked off a bigger rock, but I don't know, I think a minute, maybe 30 minutes or something like that. And I did cut myself a little bit right there. That's one thing too. All the flakes that are coming off of these are really sharp too, so you can cut yourself real easy. I have been doing this for 18 years. I started in 2003. That's when I got some of this leather I got, like this piece of leather I've been carrying around for that many years this here too. So that moose hide, it lasts a long time. And now I'm going to go back to using a smaller pressure flaker now to clean up those edges before I take the flakes off my other side. So what I'm doing right now is just getting rid of those kind of jagged edges there, and I'm going to raise my center line to the other side there so then I can shoot some flakes across the other side. Because if your center line, you can't take flakes above the center line. If you do, you'll break your point. So the edge of your piece always has to be below an imaginary line in the middle of this right here every time you take a flake. So whenever I flip it over back and forth, really what I'm doing is I'm flipping it over back and forth depending on whether I need to take the flake off of this side or this side, based upon whether my edge is on this side or that side of an imaginary center line on the piece. So whenever I start off with a rock too, kind of what I do is I pick it up and I look at it, and I basically picture if there was a playing card in the center of that rock, just a really thin plane that exists in the middle of that rock right there. And that's what I'm trying to get to, is that plane in there. So I got to flip it over back and forth a bunch of times to get it flat, trying to get to that plane. And whenever I'm hitting it with this grindstone on the edges right here, what I'm doing is I'm getting rid of the weak spots on the edges right there, and I'm making it strong there, so whenever I apply the pressure to it, that pressure can build up and then shoot some energy through there without just fracturing into a whole bunch of little bitty pieces. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, and then, so say like whenever it's on that side of the line, you flake there and you just go back and forth, and it'll be thicker on those spots where it's on each side of the line too. It just depends on what they're made out of, how long they are. Usually, say like the cheapest I make anything for is $10 an inch, and it goes up from there, depending on material, difficulty, and size. So like one like this, when I get done with it, probably be about 40 bucks. maybe 45, I don't know. However long that is right there. Yeah, this is chert. Yeah, it's K County chert from Oklahoma. I believe people call it Florence A as well. But this type of point out of some K County material like this, I'd charge about 10 bucks an inch for it. Yeah, sometimes I will. If I'm in the right place at the right time where I can get them, I will. Usually obsidian's kind of one that you can get bigger pieces of kind of more regularly, just because it's a material there's a lot of. And then flint from Texas as well. There's a lot of flint from Texas that kind of has bigger pieces. I've got a TikTok video on my page where I knock a piece off of stone that's got, looks like kind of like white chalk on the outside of it, and that's called Georgetown, and it comes from Texas there. So there's a lot of rock like that down in Texas that you can get and you can kind of knock pieces off of. This is a piece that I knocked off of one I was working on the other day, some of that Georgetown, and that one's big enough that I could make a point out of. This one I probably won't put notches in. I'm kind of trying to make it more like a paleo lancelet, you know, type point. Yeah, I have before. It's been a long time. I've been flint knapping for a lot of years, and several years ago I actually kind of did it for a living and traveled all over the place and tried to make my living at it, and it was a hard way to make a living. But I used to make knives and tomahawks and different stuff then, and pretty much anymore I usually just make arrowheads and kind of point types that interest me. Usually people kind of like arrowheads that come from their area, you know. Thought, crap, I better look. So I didn't think my fire was going that heavy to have my leg on fire, but you know, it was definitely worth a look there. All right. Can you hear the coyotes? Now I'm gonna go back and even up where I took a lot of those flakes. No, I don't have any rocks heat treating in there now. But I probably should if I got a fire going, right? Whenever I do that, I have to kind of start earlier in the day. And what I do is my fire pit's about 18 inches deep. What I'll do is I build a fire in there for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours, something like that, and get the hole dried out real good and get it hot in there. And then I put some dirt and sand down in there, and then I put my rocks in there, and I put about 3 or 4 inches of dirt and sand on top of that and build another fire on it. And then I'll burn it for most of the day and then all night too, so whenever I do it, it kind of takes quite a while. But the rocks that I'm doing that with, I'll be trying to get up to 600 to 650 degrees, something like that. And it takes a while to get them up that hot. And you want to do it slow too, because if you do it really fast, the rocks will blow up. They can only take so much temperature shift, so you got to do it kind of slow. And they have to be dried out pretty well too, because if they got a lot of water in them and you try to do that and moisture in them, then they'll blow up. Because the moisture in there tries to kind of boil inside the rock, and it's got to go somewhere. So, like, a lot of people now do it with kilns instead of doing it with the fire. I just do it with the fire just because I think it's kind of fun. It's starting to come into the shape that I was going for, that I'm liking here. And the way that I'm taking these flakes now, I'm taking little bitty flakes at kind of a, almost a 90-degree angle variance a little bit right there. And what I'm doing right now is I'm putting little bitty flakes on there and sharpening the edge of it, which is making it serrated on there and makes these babies really sharp. Now, when you take a big flake off of a rock, it's actually sharper than what your arrowheads are, because on this you got a whole bunch of different little bitty edge changes, but on a flake you just have a real smooth one, kind of like what you'd have on a knife or a razor or something like that. So the bigger flakes, they're super sharp, and they're actually sharper than what razors are. Do a little bit more thinning on the base. Right. some nice basal thinning flakes there. It's kind of hard, got to get it turned right for y'all to see the flake pattern on it there. Still just a little bit thicker right here, and my edge is kind of a little bit lower, so I think I'm going to take just a few more flakes through there. Thank you very much. No, that's not how I make my living. It's just my hobby. I have fun with it. No, I actually made a TV commercial for where I work this week, so I do something different for a living. Not really quite a Clovis, more like a, say like a agate basin kind of point. It's kind of more what I was going for, just kind of more like a paleo lancelet type. It's a piece of leather that I'm using, and what I do with that leather is whenever my tool comes off of the stone, whenever my flake releases, it'll stab into my hand. Yeah, doing the Clovises, you got to make them a little bit thicker than what I got this one, and then set them up for those flutes, and then strike them and take those flutes off of there. I do make those sometimes. This one right here, I didn't really have set up for doing that. And this is a piece of tractor tire is what I made this out of a long time ago. A little bit more edge work on this and I'll be done. That kind of ugly spot on there I want to get rid of. And if you're trying to learn, best thing to do is just kind of watch somebody else and get what advice that you can when you can. If you can nap with some people in person, that's always nice and helps. Because it's, you know, it's always easier to kind of see what's going on in person than, you know, from a video. But these videos aren't too bad, you know. It's definitely a start. Whenever I started napping a long time ago, there really wasn't much of a internet presence going on, so back then you just had to kind of find some people to show you what to do. And fortunately for me, I did. But I kind of like doing these videos for everybody that's trying to learn now, so they can kind of figure out how to do it. This particular, you know, and usually kind of like, say, like your more paleo lancelet type stuff would have a little bit of basal grinding on them as well. So I'm going to give this one a little bit of basal grinding on there. Call it good. I feel pretty good about that one. Got a nice flake pattern on it. A lot of time with your paleo stuff like that, they kind of more have like a pressure flake type pattern on there, so it's kind of more what I was going for, to, you know, say, you know, something similar like an agate basin type style. I'm sure it's not exactly the same as what they made 10,000 years ago, but hey, you know, I'll do what I can. I hope everybody's having a good night. I'm always having a good night whenever I'm flint napping. Sitting next to my fire. Probably have a drink off my beer here. Root beer. I like drinking root beer while I'm napping. The sarsaparilla flavor really, you know, brings out the points. How's it going? Thank you very much. Show my piece I made there, live on TikTok. Ready to go. If I needed to make that into a tool right now, I could definitely do it. Your rocks don't break like that? Yeah, it depends on what kind of rocks they are. Certain rocks will. You need chert, jasper, agate, obsidian, stuff like that. Is this one for sale? Sure, I'd sell this one. Let me get my old tape measure out of my box here and see how long it is. Pretty much exactly 4 inches. So I would take 40 bucks for that plus shipping. So let's just say 50 bucks, because small flat rate now is $9.25. So I'd send it to you for 50 bucks. All right, well, I'm glad to get on here and do a live video tonight. I've had a good week this week. I made a commercial for where I work at on TV. I got a new tattoo this week, which I'm pretty happy with. It does have some pretty good notches on that one right there. I don't know if you can see that very well or not. I can turn my arm the right direction here or whatever. Yeah, there we go. Went deer hunting today. Had a success out in the woods. So it's been a really good week for me. I hope y'all have a good week. hope you have a good day tomorrow and a good night's sleep tonight. This is only a dream. If you're interested in the point, just send me a message, man. I'm going to sign off of here and enjoy my fire. Thanks for watching. I'm Seth. Flintknapping by Seth.